Hello and welcome to the India session of Microsoft Ignite. I am Charu Srinivasan, Partner Director of Engineering in the Cloud Plus AI division at the Microsoft India Development Center. I have with me Nishu Goel, one of our youngest MVPs, an authority on Angular, having written a hugely successful book on the subject. My second guest is Praveen Srivastava, Microsoft MVP and Director at Astrasoft Consulting. He offers business and technology consulting to startups and enterprises around applied intelligence. One of the companies he's working with is Bionic Yantra, which has developed an exoskeleton to help patients with spinal cord injuries or stroke rehabilitation. We would love to chat with Praveen more about these applications in our conversation today. Being at the cusp of an intelligence revolution which is powered by technology at every step of its way, leveraging AI for building solutions that are accessible for persons with diverse abilities, to leveraging the cloud to power our remote experiences. On one hand, technology has allowed us to democratize access to information and experiences. On the other hand, it has helped us think beyond everyday scenarios and innovate at every step. This can be seen in diverse applications in the field of education, healthcare, agriculture, financial services, and manufacturing, just to name a few. And as we look at this paradigm that we're kind of going through, our entire computing industry is going through a major shift. If I think back at 1992, this was the year that I joined the company, the total amount of internet traffic was around 100 gigabytes per day. Now that's nearly 17.5 million times that per second. And interestingly, 90% of the data has been generated over the last 2 years. Every one of our experiences are going to be infused with AI, whether it is autonomous cars that generate nearly 100 gigabytes of data per second, our factory floors, our drones, all of these generate tons of data every second that they operate. So we're literally seeing an explosion of compute and storage power. And by 2021, we expect nearly that the world will be filled with 25 billion intelligent computing devices. So the use cases around precision medicine, precision agriculture, and there is a broad and deep impact on all parts of the society and the economy. So as we filled this world with billions of events, serverless compute and containers, there's this rich world, and we've moved past that initial client-server compute world that we used to be into something where every service and every product will be associated with the digital cogs. There is no insurance policy, no car, no refrigerator, no factory floor that is not going to be associated with digital cogs. So the sense this gives me is that our world as we know it is changing, and because we're bringing in a whole new set of devices ranging from smart fitness trackers to self-driving cars, running shoes or automated drones, industrial IoT in factories or oil rigs, the world is filled with the Internet of Things. So as I look back at the various waves of innovation, the cloud providing globally available unlimited compute, the IoT wave where we harness signals from sensors and devices managed centrally by the cloud, the edge wave where the intelligence has been offloaded from the cloud to the IoT devices, and of course the AI wave, we are beginning to see breakthrough intelligence. So think about it this way, the world population today, 7.6 billion. We're already in a world where devices outnumber humans, but in the next year or year and a half, we're going to get to nearly 25 billion such devices. So what is the reason, like why now do we see this major paradigm shift? And I think there are three major factors: the access to ubiquitous computing power, the breakthrough intelligence powered by AI and ML, and also the multi-sense and multi-device experiences that we experience in the world today. And machine learning, for instance, thrives on large sets of data. And with this increased number of devices, each collecting large volumes of data, we're now able to tune these algorithms and build superior intelligence. For instance, a self-driving car is generating around 10 gigabytes of data per mile. The litro camera, nearly 300 gigabytes per second. And this data is driving the intelligence. And as we look at these strides of innovation in AI, this AI can be consumed in different ways, whether it is with cognitive capabilities sensing human emotions, whether it is bots, whether it is data platforms and advanced ML helping fine-tune the logic. Input and output will no longer be restricted to the modes we see and use today. The core currency of any business will be its ability to convert their data into AI. So as I look at this paradigm shift in computing, I realize that there's a need also for a faster edge, taking real-time actions intelligently along with the advancements in hardware. And this is precisely what is causing this paradigm shift, with intelligence not being restricted to the cloud, but also permeating to the edge. Building an intelligent cloud and an intelligent edge to work together across these devices to build the internet of the future. For me, this is really, in some ways, back to the future, right? We started with mainframes, which were centralized. We moved on to kind of client server, which was in the distributed kind of paradigm. The cloud, which took us back to a centralized paradigm. And of course, now with the edge and the cloud, we're really in a distributed paradigm. And in today's world, everything is connected, devices with each other, the cloud, and finally the people using it. And interestingly, these devices using sensors collecting huge amounts of data, and today that information is underutilized. And with the intelligent edge, using machine learning, we believe we'll be able to decipher the nuances of the real world. So as we look at this, I also want to motivate an interesting and important problem, which is what's driving the growth of AI today. AI today depends upon this cloud-based computing power, the development of algorithm and mountains of data. And AI, we all understand, is going to be a transformational technology of our time. The increasing ability of computers to learn, identify complex patterns, and empower humans to make better decisions will create huge social and economic opportunity. Already, organizations are using AI to become more efficient and tackle previously untractable problems like climate change and disease. As with this transformative technologies of yesteryear, like electricity and the combustion engine, the impact of AI will stretch across society, serving as a powerful tool for the people and organizations that have access to it. And just like transformational technologies of the past, which relied on fuels like coal and oil, AI will require its own key input, which is data. Recent advancements in AI have been driven by developments in deep learning, an approach to developing AI modeled on the human brain. These deep learning models are trained using large amounts of digital data, for example, images of MRI scans and data about patient treatment. And we have now learned to identify useful patterns, for example, correlations between treatments and patient response. Large volumes of usable data are therefore a critical input for AI. This brings me to a very important question, which is how do we close the data divide and ensure that every organization can realize the benefits of data and UI and AI? We need to address the looming data divide and help organizations of all sizes realize the benefits of data and the new technologies it powers. And in many ways, for instance, Microsoft is launching an open data campaign to help address the looming data divide. And we believe that these will really focus on collaborations around shared data and motivating the need to make data sharing easier and providing the necessary tools and frameworks. So with this, I think I want to switch the conversation to our eminent panelists and ask them how we keep humans at the center of all this innovation. How do we keep humans at the center of the activities, the people work we do, and the devices that we do? And with that, let me first switch the question to Nishu, which is, what is your perspective on this paradigm shift, and how does the community that you're part of see this shift? And more interestingly, how have you driven this paradigm shift yourself?
Um, Thank you, Charu. Technology has always been interesting when it comes to the output that we see, right? How it produces a result for the community, how people can use technology and leverage it for seeing the output that they could and the magic that they could see out of the code that we write. So I've always tried to produce something, tangible when we code something. We would code on the back end, but not really see an output, and that gets boring for new developers. But when you actually see the result of what you're coding is when things get interesting. And for a similar idea, I developed this app which was related to women's safety. And the idea of that was that whatever you code inside the application would ensure something in the real world, would ensure some use case, some good in the community. And the idea is that women feel safer when they're using the application, or even if they're not using the application, they would feel that there is something that is supporting them. For example, if I tell you more about the application, it's a map-based application which ensures that whenever a woman or any user gets into the geolocation of a particular area, for instance, it's marked as a danger area, would get a push notification if the user is not using the application. And that push notification allows the user and allows the woman, for example, using the application to know that, that this particular area might not be very safe for me to, get into, or might be just tells me that, I need to be aware when I'm getting into this particular area. And it's kind of equivalent of, our parents telling us that, take your brother along with you so that you feel safer. It kind of acts like that. So this is the good that code that we write on the back end that gets created. So I think this is kind of the paradigm shift that happens with doing the same technical stuff that we do, but then with an outcome and with a result that you would see in the community and for the people.
That's really fascinating. That's lovely. I'd love to be able to use this app when it's ready. Thank you. The next question is to Praveen. Praveen, as with your career in this space, especially as you focus on the work in AI, what is your perspective on this looming digital divide? How do you think we need to approach this, and what are the approaches you have taken around this? I would love to learn more about Bionic Yantra, the work that you've done to develop an exoskeleton to help patients with spinal cord injuries. So please do allow us to learn along with you your own approach to this data divide, and more interestingly, how you've leveraged AI and ML techniques in your day-to-day work.
Thanks, Charu. So one of the things that happens is rehabilitation is a process wherein when somebody has a spinal cord injury or a stroke, they are affected and sort of completely paralyzed from the waist down. The challenge that happens is there are very small pockets of knowledge wherein they can help these patients come back and recover fully. And most of these patients are bedridden, they are not sure what information to access. And if only they could access a few information which say is there in some advanced hospitals elsewhere, they would have been much better off. Some of them can stand up, some of them can walk, and some of them are desiring to go back to what they were doing. Recently, there was this example of a person who, wearing an exoskeleton, finished a marathon. So the concept of rehabilitation has changed. People are looking from a paradigm shift perspective, not just standing up and walking again, but to get back to their lives. And hearing these stories elsewhere, they believe it can be done, but that information and data is not available locally. So what an exoskeleton does is you put it on, it helps you stand up and walk. The challenge is everyone's gait is completely different from everyone else's. So in order to be able to come back and figure out the gait pattern, figure out what is the pattern that we have to rehabilitate them in, it requires a lot of background data. So we need to collect data of how regular humans walk, what is our gait process, etc. There have been pockets of research. There are small sets of data. So for example, one of the exoskeleton companies elsewhere, they could gather around 300 to 400 instances of gait data in, say, about 2 or 3 years' time. Here in India, given the volume of people that we have, given the amount of patients that we have, hospitals tell us that they can have 500 patients pretty much every month, right? In terms of the kind of gait data that is available that we can come back and start looking at. So the challenge is very soon, with the advent of AI, which can come back and look at patterns and implement and help you, AI starts becoming the mentor. It starts becoming your local nurse. It starts becoming your local doctor who can help you in terms of saying, this is how you can rehabilitate. We know you've got an injury. There are things that you can do. You can actually get back to walking. You can get back to climbing. You can get back to cycling. And that is the input that AI comes back and gives for devices like this, which can help them power in terms of how to rehabilitate themselves. So that is the benefit that you get in terms of working with the AI-driven perspective, in terms of working with rehabilitation space.
Fascinating. That's really fascinating, and it's so heartwarming to hear about these stories. Thank you for sharing that, Praveen. So as I think about this, I think the other element of this is how do we help build trust around this technology, right? There's clearly a lot of debate out there on how do we protect individuals' privacy, right? How do we make sure that data breach threats are mitigated? And in many ways, there are valuable lessons to be learned from the world of open source. While there are different differences between data and code, particularly around the steps of the need to address privacy and security when dealing with data, our own experience with open source provides us huge insights for enabling successful collaboration. And as we look at this, I would love to hear your perspectives again, Praveen, on how you think about trustworthy computing, especially as we look at responsible AI, as we look at a bunch of the approaches that various companies are taking. I'd love to hear your perspectives.
Sure. In fact, that's a good and a very pertinent question for us. When we started off in terms of collecting data, putting it as part of the device and giving it to a few patients, one of the first questions we asked was, how do we know this data is good? Has it been ratified? Has somebody looked at it? Is it open to all? Can I check what is happening as part of this data? So how can I trust your data? Remember, we are dealing with patients. These patients are paralyzed from the waist down. They are dependent on your device to help them, rehabilitate, get up, walk, and stuff. So they really need to trust your algorithm, and they are, in a sense, putting their entire lives in your hands or in your device, and trusting you with this whole process. So one of the things that we had to do was, instead of looking at just collecting the data ourselves and holding on to it, we started collaborating with research institutes. So IIT Bangalore has been a great help. They stepped in and said, we will sponsor the data collection. We will work with you in terms of the data management, in terms of the whole AI analysis part of it. And they have sponsored a program wherein they have put the device in hands, and we are collecting a lot of data which is being shared as part of research. And institutes like this have a structure wherein they collect the data, they create it for research, and so it becomes more open and shareable. It goes through the process of removing the patient's names and stuff, so it is still secure, but the entire rest of the context is maintained. So while I think some of the research institutes have this structure, it's great to see Microsoft and other commercial enterprises stepping into this area, right? Very similar to what GitHub did to democratize code. It is great to see large enterprises stepping in, because the challenge that's happening is people who own the data, who have access to data, have a head start. And while that's great, the challenge that becomes is, how do others trust this data? How do others share this data? So every time we go to a patient, one of their first questions is, have you tried it on other patients? Can I talk to them? Have exoskeletons been used in other countries? Can I get some information about what has happened to them? My hip to knee ratio, my knee to ankle ratio, I have, there are patients whose left leg is slightly longer than the right leg. So would the device help in this case? Have you used it in similar patients elsewhere? So the very fact that medical data is something that can be opened up accelerates the use of devices and AI ML in those spaces. So I think it's great in terms of saying that we need lots of data, that is the currency for everything that we're doing, etc. But we also need to ensure that this data is trusted. And it goes back to the term that you said. For example, when we're using currency, when I come back and share a note with you, when I come back and give you a 500 rupee note, we know this note is trustable. It's certified by the government of India. There might be very few minor cases of fraud, but other than that, we trust the currency, which is why the whole economics around it works. So very similarly, when we come back and work with large amounts of data and predictions around it, we have to keep it open so that we can build upon the trust. In fact, Nishu, I'm guessing it's something very similar in your case as well, right? You're collecting a lot of data, which essentially leads to saying, is this area safe? And people need to trust the data. So how do they go about doing something like that, Nishu?
Yeah, so I actually have a very interesting example to, talk about this. So I was doing a fellowship in one of the villages in Jharkhand, state of India. And I randomly asked this woman there that, if there's an app which tells you that, if you go to this particular area, don't worry, the app will take care of you. Would you be able to, believe in something like that? She's like, no way, that's not possible.
Right.
Yeah. And then a similar question I asked to, one of my colleagues, and she being aware of, how technology is evolving, she's like, yeah, maybe I would like to try this. If the app sends notification to two registered family members saying that, this your daughter, for example, is in this particular danger area, and she's not responded for a while, and her location shows to be in that danger area for a while now. So if that's the notification to two registered users, that's exactly helping as some companion who was with us when we were traveling to that particular city. So I think a lot of it depends on the features that we include in the app. A lot of trust comes from there. And for the woman who was in the village that I inquired with, she showed a lot of curiosity to try that, because for her this was just not possible, and she wanted to see if we could trust an application, if an application could actually take care of them in an unknown area. So yeah, I think that's where the idea of trust comes in when dealing with technology.
Very true. Very true. Right. So even in our case, if a doctor recommends the patient for rehabilitation onto the device, the patients blindly trust it. But if we put the device in education institute, for example, in IIITB, and we get a patient there, the patient is skeptical of even looking at it, even though he knows it's exactly the same device, it's helped a lot of other people. But in a college setting, right, he is not as comfortable with it. So a lot of the data that we collect and a lot of the context that we collect, I think it needs to be done in a very open way, and it needs to gradually build trust on top of it. And that is when all the AI ML that we are doing, all the algorithms that we are doing, starts making sense to direct engineers.
That's such an incredible conversation, and I loved the Praveen and Nishu interaction as well. That was great. Just a quick question, just as I think about this, right? We've learned through our work on protecting privacy, responsible AI, and sustainability that it's really important to really have a clear set of principles while engaging with important and complex societal issues. The examples that both of you used, I think, fall in that category. And we believe that these principles will inform the broader conversations on open data, and others can hopefully build and improve on these, right? So we think about what does it mean to make the data open for helping us solve important societal problems, like the healthcare example that Praveen just used. How do we make it usable? How do we help organizations generate value from their data according to their choices? So how can it be empowering? And we also want to employ security controls to ensure our data collaboration is operationally secure where it's desired. And we will help organizations protect individuals' privacy in data sharing collaborations that involve personally identifiable information. So our data collaboration principles around open, usable, empowering, secure, and private, we think these principles guide a lot of our thinking, especially as we look ahead at this entire space. But let me switch gears and ask Nishu, how do you create magic with your code? I just saw you come alive as you talked about your application. So your own experiences, I think we heard about how you brought data and AI into your domain. How do you create, like what's an interesting tech problem that you've solved? And we've already heard about it, but I'd love to know more. What was hard and challenging about that tech problem and how you went about solving it?
Sure. So I think I'll take one more features example here, the feature that I was trying to put in to the same application. And it was a challenging but very interesting thing to do with the app. And it was about categorizing the danger areas as per the application. Now, danger areas mean different to different people, right? It could be, some robbery for somebody living in Delhi, but it could be just sloppy roads for somebody living in a hilly area, for example. So danger areas mean different to different people. And categorizing them as per the data that we have currently and as per the data that we scrape of for example, different crime portals that have a report of, how many crimes were reported in this particular city, for example, or what were the most common crimes reported here in this area. So on the basis of that, deciding that this particular danger area comes into a category which is the most dangerous and should be a red alert sort of a thing for a user. And for example, just a sloppy road example could be a low danger area. So categorizing that and using pattern recognition in that area, and ensuring that getting into the geolocation of a particular danger area is something that sends the notification to the user, or it sends the notification only when you're actually in that danger area for a for a long time. So such decisions based on how so we were using this library NLTK, and we had to decide wherein um, this particular area should be considered a danger area, and does it come into that category, was the challenging thing to do. And I think deciding and finally being able to categorize those areas was something that I was very excited about when I got it as a result, and was some and I could say that it's some magic to me as a developer myself. For sure it would be for somebody who's using it.
Fascinating. This reminds me of a famous quote by Arthur C. Clarke. Arthur C. Clarke is a futurist, and he made this memorable observation more than half a century ago. And the quote goes somewhat like this: any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So, as we consider the future of artificial intelligence, magic is probably an apt way of describing advances in AI and its promise. Artificial intelligence, once the stuff of science fiction, is no longer a dream. And both of you have told me your wonderful stories of how you're applying it in your communities. And so, artificial intelligence, the world of magic, is happening as we speak, it's happening now. And with that, I want to thank all of you for your presence on this panel discussion. Thank you, Nishu Goyal and Praveen Srivastava. This is just a fascinating conversation. I want to leave you with this one thought, which is our job is to turn science fiction into reality and make it look easy. And with that, thank you again. And this is signing off. Bye, everyone.